I think it's really important to engage people who disagree with you. And I think that everybody can, to some degree, fill themselves with groups of people who just agree with them, in that sense, comfortable. But when you engage with people, what's really stopping, I think, some Latter-day Saints is this feeling of inadequacy when they do it. And talk to people that disagree with you, because it's important, because it helps you to learn. You can read, study, learn, fill your filing cabinet with knowledge, so the Holy Ghost has something to work with.
I want to augment something you said with Joseph Smith,
okay,
which is always a good thing. But I do think it's really important to read stuff that we suspect will disagree with us.
Yes.
Joseph Smith gave a statement that's not very well known.
Now, wait a minute. You're countering centuries of culture that say don't read anti. Maybe
no, I'm not saying don't read anti, but I mean, I read Catholics, I read Jews, I read atheists, I read Protestants and Evangelicals.
So everything doesn't come from Deseret Book? Your entire PhD wasn't
from Deseret Book.
Wasn't procured from reading Deseret Book?
Joseph Smith gave this statement that most people haven't heard, even though it inspired the fantastic Richard Bushman biography. But he says, "I am like a huge rough stone rolling down from a high mountain, and the only polishing I get is when some corner gets rubbed off by coming in contact with something else." Polishing, that is growth, progression, maturity, comes through contact, through encounter. And if we're living in a bubble, we're not encountering any of that stuff, and we're not being polished.
Can I push it even a tiny bit farther? Yeah. The cultural tendency in our church, especially among women, it just is to defer from anything that's going to remotely look like contention. But you can have conversations with somebody who's very different from you without being contentious, even though you might be contending for the truth.
And let me give you a quick practice point that'll make it a little bit more comfortable for somebody who doesn't have a lot of knowledge. For example, maybe you don't have a deep grounding in the scriptures. Learn from the person. Go talk to somebody who disagrees with you and start saying, what do you believe? Well, I don't know what I believe about that. That's interesting. Tell me more. Start engaging with them from that perspective. You do not have to be an expert on LDS or any theology or any history or any doctrine. You've got to engage with people, though, because as they talk, you can go, look, that's a tool. In fact, some of the missionaries say, well, how did you learn what you know? Which isn't much, but how do you learn what you know? And the way that I've done it is by engaging with people who disagree with me, because they raise an issue. I'm like, I don't know what that is. And so I will ask them everything they know about it. And not only will I go check it against our own doctrine and our own history and what our leaders say about it, but I will also check it against the authorities, the sources that they would pull from to get those ideas, and say, that guy didn't even understand it correctly. So I don't want to straw man what he said by saying he's the authority, which is a big problem that I think some evangelicals have, and I would caution them against it. The idea that I talked to some Latter-day Saints, and they told me is no basis for an authorized.
He had the title elder,
but he was a bishop, and
he was an elders quorum president,
and that's the idea. Is that I think that too many members, especially when they do get a leadership position, they don't realize that the function of the administrative position is just that, it's an administrator. You're not supposed to be the scholar, and Ben's talked about this a lot. You are not the authoritative person to talk on all issues, and you don't have to be. You can say, look, I appreciate your concern. Yes, that historical issue, or yes, that doctrinal issue, but I need to research that myself. Let's go do that together and come back together.
Nothing wrong with that.
Be the 3-year-old. What's that?
Yeah.
Why? How do you know?
To give an endorsement to what Ben and Travis are saying, it will sometimes be challenging when you come in contact with opinions or beliefs or scholarship that disagrees with what you believe, but it can also be very enlightening and even exhilarating, right? When I come across saying, the scholar has these awesome ideas or theories that jive really well with what I believe, let's explore them more, and that gives you confidence, that gives you something to sink your teeth into to explore further.